Something's in the air. Not loud, not obvious, just a quiet coordination between power, politics and technology that doesn't even pretend to serve you anymore, just to manage you. I've been following this development for a while now. Politics that determine how our thoughts, our speech, our movements, even our beliefs now are being folded into a system that promises safety but delivers more and more control to the state and corporations. And tonight with that speech I'm bringing it all together. The pieces that used to seem separate, like NATO's cognitive warfare program, digital IDs, chat control, on-device AI, they are not separate, they are one design. And now, almost on cue, virtually as I was speaking in Kirk, Trump signed NSPM-7, a directive that defines your belief as a national security threat. I mean, think about that. The state deciding which thoughts are safe. NSPM-7, because it just happened, is not included in my speech, but by the time you see this, I've published an expose on Substack. It's probably one of the most important pieces that I have written because it will affect your lives in ways you can't even imagine yet. The link is with all the other links from the presentation in the description. So in the following presentation, I'm going to connect all of it. The systems, the psychology, the governance models, the policies, to show how they merge into a single architecture of control. Because by the time most people notice, it may already be too late.
Okay, so you're all very welcome. Thanks very much for coming. I'm just going to quickly introduce Thomas, and then we can let him get on with his stuff. I've been following Thomas Peratt for a couple of years now, and he has on his platform, his YouTube platform, Coup Analytics. He has some wonderful interviews that are well worth watching from a variety of different people. A lot of people you would know, and then some people that you might not know, but all really interesting work. And his speciality is the study of the ways in which humans distort the truth. Thomas has an MA in Science, Communication, Behaviour and Credibility Analysis at the Manchester Metropolitan University. His research topic was the linguistic deception markers in high-stakes business negotiations. He's trained as a behavioural analyst, investigative interviewer, and non-verbal communication expert. Through his online platform, you'll come across examinations or analyses of manufactured conflicts and controlled narratives. He has decades of experience in corporate high-level negotiation, and his passion is narrative construction and shaping of public perception, and critically, methods employed to maintain narrative dominance. Just a couple of things I might mention, things that can be in the back of our minds as we listen to this presentation. One is that the drive to war, when countries make a drive to war, that it doesn't happen in a vacuum. They have to create the narrative structure for their populations to go along with war, and you know, we're going to be looking at some of the ways in which our own governments are creating narrative structure in order to bring us closer and closer to war. And with that, if you put your hands together and welcome Thomas to Ireland.
And I would like to start with thanking Jonathan for bringing me here, and you guys for having me here. Thanks for coming here. A very brief, and Jonathan already kind of introduced me, so this is basically a slide for myself not to start rambling on without proper introduction. Most of it Jonathan already did. I only would like to add one thing. So if you see my presentation, this little sign, and you will, as Jonathan said, you will get this presentation. There is source material, either from myself or from other people. In regards to me, very, very briefly. So I spent my career in corporate life. The largest part in a American company, which is responsible for critical infrastructure, believe it or not. That meant that I had to separate what I'm doing in this capacity as behavior analyst, and this is where I want to go with this, from my professional life. So I'm here as a behavior analyst, and this is also how I look at the things that are going on in the world. And I will share a couple of things with you that are directly related to and I hesitate to say the Israel-Palestine conflict, although Netanyahu turns it around and he says the Palestine-Israel conflict, but I'm a linguist. So I study how people express things. And there are 2 points in this presentation where I present you something that you can take with you. Only knowing it will change the things you fuse certain things and you listen. So one of those giveaways is at the beginning and another one at the end. That's my presentation. Warming up your brain. I talked about that I'm a linguist and I would like, this is my first giveaway. So there are a couple of key findings in my research, and you have to bear with me for about 3 minutes, you will understand. And it will help you to understand what comes after. Now, in my own academic research, and I had 30 senior executives from one of the largest corporations in this world participating in my research, and it was specifically in regards to how do high-level managers deceive and cheat in business negotiations. One of the key findings was people do not listen, and I will give you immediately an example. And the other one is that people don't like to lie. So there's this misconception, it's either lie or truth. That doesn't exist. It's interwoven. Lies and truth are very much mingled, which is why when you come into non-verbal communication, also body language as a means of detecting deception is very flawed. It does not exist. It's a myth. So I give you 90 seconds of theory. You guys are native English speakers, right? All of you. So you have about 100,000, almost. Some. Okay. Yeah. You have about 100,000 words in your active memory from the English language. And for the purpose of this little exercise, we divide those words in only 2 categories: content words and function words. Content words: table, Jonathan, night, school, talking, walking, these kind of things. Content words. And then you have function words: pronouns, articles, auxiliary verbs. Those are the little words that glue it all together. And I'm almost there. Now, 100,000 words, question to you. Function words, content words, pronouns, articles. How many do you think of those function words are there? From those 100,000 words, how many of those little words do we have? English language? Wild guess?
5,000.
5,000? Anyone?
500.
Wow, where is he? 450. 0.5% of those 100,000 words are function words. Now, the bigger question is, how often, now that I'm speaking, percentage-wise, how often am I using those function words?
64.5%.
55% of the time. Now, why I'm telling you this? Now, those function words, they're processed in a different part of the brain, which completely evades conscious awareness. Now, if I'm in a negotiation or as a police officer and I want to figure out what type of function words this person, also my interviewee, is using, it would take me so much cognitive effort that I would no longer be able to process what the person is saying. And reversely, and this is where I come with Bill Clinton, and conversely, if I want to control, as a speaker, if I want to control my function words, it would cost me so much cognitive effort, I would no longer be able to coherently speak. So that's it with theory. Now, we all know Bill Clinton, right? And probably for the wrong reasons. there was this little scandal that he had, and he was interviewed on PBS by Jim Lehrer. And at that time, Jim Lehrer was the most experienced journalist that PBS had. And Bill Clinton, and these are the exact words, because as a linguist, we like to have the exact things. Yeah? You had no sexual relationship with this young woman. That was the question. And Bill Clinton basically said, there is not a sexual relation that's accurate. Now, Bill Clinton not only deceived the interviewer, but he deceived a whole nation. Whilst anyone with a basic understanding, and this is what I try to tell you, anyone, and if I show you, you will say, yes, of course. Anyone with a basic understanding of linguistics, and not even high level, would have seen that Bill Clinton did not answer the question. He answered a different question instead. I mean, this is a very well-known example. Very briefly, not wanting to spend too much time on it. Which single word gave away that Bill Clinton was deceptive in this statement? Is. Okay. So, Bill Clinton technically, and afterwards, I mean, he was under oath. He was obliged to speak the truth. Technically, he did, because at the time of the interview, the relationship with Monica Lewinsky was over. So the interviewer asked him in the past, you had a relationship with a woman? And he said, that's correct. There is not a relationship with a woman, okay? So this is when I say in my research, people do not listen. This is what I mean. Yeah? Now I have a reverse example. This is from a real FBI investigation, and I have interviewed Mark McClitch, who was a special agent under Ronald Reagan in the White House. And this sentence is from a real FBI investigation where a young woman said, and she claimed she was kidnapped. The young woman said, someone came from behind, put something over my head, and threw me into the car. Someone came from behind, put something over my head, and put me into the car. Very quickly, which single word do you think gave the deception away? The logical answer would have been, well, first of all, most of the time when I ask this question, people say something, someone, the vagueness sounds a bit fishy. But the logical formulation of this sentence would have been, someone came from behind, put something over my head and put me into a car, any car, some car. I have no clue what car, but not the car, right? So for the FBI agent, it was not a sign that she was lying. It was just a red flag to which he circled back later. Okay? Now, enough of this. And I will throw you right away into the fire. Now, there was a recent, there are so many scandals now, it's hard to say it's a scandal even, yeah? Who has heard about the Esther project? Israel's Esther project. Okay, so what Israel was caught doing, and I'm not claiming that Israel is the only entity that does it, they paid high-level influencers with millions of followers, up to $150,000 a month, to propagate, how shall I say this? I can't say fake information, but let's just say manipulated information. They tried to sway public opinion because Israel knows they're losing the war of image, the image war. Because what's happening in Gaza is just not justifiable. As a behavior analyst, I can tell you it goes in people's subconscious. So whatever spin Israel tries to put on it, it's getting harder and harder. So what are they doing? These kind of things. But interestingly, they got caught. It's quite it made quite some waves. And then, of course, all those influencers said, and I'm telling you this for a reason. All those influencers said, well, we didn't know. Let's look at this. So first of all, they all signed non-disclosure agreements. And what's in this non-disclosure agreement, and I stated here correctly as it's in the contract, all public deliverables must remain free of explicit attribution to the client. Client, of course, is Israel. All public deliverables must remain free of explicit attribution to the client. So This was a non-disclosure agreement where they were very specific. We do not want, on any circumstances, that the world knows that Israel paid you up to $150,000 a month to propagate this kind of message to your millions of followers. And now I show you, and I'll have a little bit of energy in here, meaning I'm not going in all the details, but here is interesting to see that on top is the Israeli government. 2 different ministries were actually involved. Below you have the influencers, and in the middle you see all those entities who were involved in funneling this money. I'm showing you this so that you see how much effort and how elaborate Israel set up this kind of money flows to influencers to keep it hidden. Yeah, well, I can tell you they failed. The scandal blew. The scandal blew. It was actually, what is now, a month or so. The thing to remember here is Israel is not alone. They got now caught. This is not an exception. We are manipulated left and right. This is what you have to understand. And as a behavior analyst, people often underestimate the power of words, the power of framing, the power of cognitive biases that we all have. And these kind of companies and entities, they are very, very sophisticated. You know? So they have all the resources they need, they have all the knowledge they need, they have all the means they need in order to propagate their message. Now, how does this connect? So this is basically how governments, and I say specifically plural, governments try to manipulate information that you get. And the opposite side is, this is an example of how they try to prevent you from distributing messages that they don't want. Now, chat control is being discussed. Now, first of all, chat control. Has anyone heard of it? Do you know what chat control is? It's a law. It's a law that's being discussed, and that's hopefully not, but probably it will be implemented. It's a law that obligates any social media platform, any messaging app to screen everything you do. Everything. Now, they tried, and with a couple of, interesting to see is that Denmark, a liberal democracy, Denmark, they're at the moment, because they're sitting at the head of the EU at the moment, they're the main driver behind of this. It's quite surprising. Now you have Germany, Luxembourg, and Slovakia. They're kind of hesitant. They said, not for now, not for now. But then you have a number of countries who said, okay, we need to look at this a bit better, and we need to ensure that, on stronger safeguards. That's a very, very vague description of what they really want. So at the moment, it has been blocked. Now, I should be more specific. At the moment, it has not been implemented or approved. But that doesn't mean it's gone. So I fear we will face a future, and in light what I still will show you, I fear we will see a future where nothing will be private. This is what you have to understand. I have a tech background. I don't really want to go too deep into that, but I can tell you the means the technological means are already there, and they're already on your phone, and I will show you. Now, one of the main topics of my little presentation today is the convergence of intelligence services, meaning the state with corporate power. Now, we have, at least for the last 30 years, probably longer, already seen this revolving door circled between politicians going right, linea recta into high corporate functions and back. Yeah, this is nothing new. But with the new means that those companies have, the information, the data that they're collecting from all of us, this gets a total different magnitude. Now, we just talked about chat control. Now, this is an image from 2019 from Apple's consumer electronic show 2019 in Las Vegas. What happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. Now, I did some research because I'm completely locked into Apple's environment. Yeah. This is an Apple iPhone 16 M3 chip. M chip, also older, some of the older phones, I don't know when they started to use the Apple-produced artificial intelligence-able M chips, M1, 2, 3. So who is an iPhone with the M chip? I would say they started at least with the 14, I'm not entirely sure. Who is a relatively new iPhone? Nobody. Okay, but that doesn't take away the danger, because any company will do that the moment AI comes on your phones, and it will. It doesn't matter which phone that you're using. So, and I was advised to be mindful how I formulate this. Okay, again, you see this little thingy here. I published a report on my Substack, and I spoke about this on YouTube. But basically, what Apple can do with, and they call it on-device AI. Now, there's a difference. For example, if you use OpenAI, ChatGPT, it goes to a server. Yeah, it needs a connection. On-device AI means you have a second brain that's not yours on your phone. It's always there. Okay, that's the big difference. So with that on-device AI, Apple can scan all your photos, all your messages, all the files for what they consider, and the question is, who is they? Apple or the state? Who is they? Yeah. Any of that that's on your device. Every message in your app. So independent of chat control, any message on any app that you have on your phone. Now, people say, but I have encryption, I have a VPN, right? Okay, Apple device here, VPN in, VPN out. But if you have this little brain on your phone, this on-device AI, this AI sees everything you see after it's decrypted and before it's encrypted, right? Now, Apple is true in that sense that they're not sending the actual files and photos and messages to Apple, but they send the metadata. They categorize, sort through it, and if you have information on your device that either Apple or the government deems extreme or illegal or whatever, it might get sent to the authorities without you knowing. I don't think I have to elaborate on the risk that gives all of you, because you are, not exactly in line with the mainstream narrative that the governments are selling us, right? And if you think, who am I? I have nothing to lose. My microscopic Twitter account has been permanently suspended, and all I'm doing is I'm uploading shorts of my interviews on that platform. Actually, I'm thankful today because that's why I started with my Substack. But don't underestimate the little effort it costs to get data from large parts of the population. This is what I want to say. It gets cheaper and easier and faster. So I would not be surprised if there are a couple of people in this room whose data has been shared in a way that you are not aware, and that you would not consent if you would be aware. I'm positively sure. I do not know you, but the very fact that you are here increases the likelihood by a magnitude. Good. Oracle. Who knows Oracle? Company. Okay. So very briefly, Oracle is one of the largest data center providers. Now, what is a data center today? Well, there is no cloud. People say, well, my information is in the cloud. Cloud does not exist. Clouds where you store the data, your pictures, your anything, are large data centers. And if I say large, They're so large that you can't see the end of the aisle, so large. Now comes AI. So Oracle, amongst others, is one of those huge data center providers, same as Microsoft, same as Amazon. But now comes AI. So data centers, the traditional data centers, and the data centers needed for AI is a total different ballgame. So this is how Larry Ellison, who is the co-founder of Oracle, and who was already a rich guy in the 1990s, today makes his money. And one of his biggest contributors are, of course, defense contracts, right? Now, Larry Ellison, this name will still come up. Why? Because Larry Ellison is also spearheading this, what I call hostile takeover of TikTok. So Larry Ellison suddenly has, and this is now done, yeah? Larry Ellison and this conglomerate, it's not him, there's a whole conglomerate, now own the US data of all TikTok users. Now, I was not aware that, again, don't nail me on the cross, but my latest information was that 170 million Americans use TikTok. When I heard this number first, I hardly could believe it, but it's that big, right? Now, why is this so interesting? Because of the behavioral data. Yes, they're gonna sell you something and commercials, whatever, but that's not what they want. It's your behavioral data. And anyone from Tesla's cars who have cameras around, it's a total different story. Cameras around, Facebook, all those applications, they want one thing, your data. Why do they want this? They analyze your preferences. And then they use them to predict your behavior. You have to realize that we as humans, and I will come back to this, are very easy to manipulate. And with the data that we all provide voluntarily to all those different companies, and I mean, I have on my phone a number of apps where I know they collect my data. It's not just one app, yeah. So this data comes now in a data center that is partially, I don't want to say owned, but works together with the Pentagon. And what does the Pentagon want? They want a certain narrative, and they don't want another narrative. Now, there are actually, the title I changed. I thought the original title was The Incestuous Relationship Between Oracle and the Pentagon. That would have been, yeah, then I thought, I do not know you, I do not know how far I can go with my candidness. Yeah? So, Ellison, I have here a statement of him. And you really have to let this sink in. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we are constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. Now ask yourself, to whom are they going to report? What did he mean? I mean, first of all, we're going to constantly record everything, which is basically already done. Everything that can be recorded is being recorded at this moment. Yeah? But the interesting part for me here was, and report. So coincidentally, one of his biggest contractors is the Pentagon. So ask yourself, to whom is he going to report? Right? This is why I said this is this incestuous relationship between Oracle and the Pentagon. This has not, this TikTok, hostile TikTok takeover had nothing to do with China, but everything with Israel. I will come back to that right here.
We have these new things, like drones, things like that. I don't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefield in which we engage. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is class. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. That's very good. And, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy, he's a friend.
X and TikTok. So, again, Israel, and they know they're losing the war of the images. And they also know the power of social media. And this is why they are behind the hostile takeover of TikTok, and they don't need to take over X because they have X already in their pockets, as you have heard him just saying. Now, again, this unhealthy relationship between the state and corporations. Now, Larry Ellison vetted Marco Rubio to see where his loyalties vis-a-vis Israel stand. There are a couple of other names on this slide: Ron Prosor, Tony Blaire. Whenever this name comes up, I get a very ambivalent feeling, but the name will come up again. Now, Marco Rubio openly cultivated foreign-linked billionaires, multiple. There was no consequence for him whatsoever. Yeah? And we know all of this because these are the original emails between Prosor and Larry Ellison. You can find them on Dropsite News. There are more of them, but it's clear that this was a vetting process. This is from 2015, and at the time, Prosor was Israel's ambassador to the UN. Yeah? And Prosor is not a little guy. Yeah? At the moment, I think he's Israel's ambassador in Germany, Israel's permanent representative to the United Nations, ambassador to the United Kingdom. So on that level, these kind of discussions are going on between private entities who have their own personal interests. And I'm specifically making a distinction, between personal interests and companies' interests, because they do not necessarily align. Because Larry Ellison is very much in favor of the Zionist state Israel. Now, if that's not enough, Larry Ellison has a son, David. And David, today 41 years old, just completed, by the way, not so fast, the TikTok hostile takeover has been completed. This is done, right? Now, there has been a massive merger in the US media landscape. So Larry Ellison's son, David, has just merged two media empires who were already pretty large and consolidated this under his leadership. That means one family, again, this is the combination between state, media, large corporations like Oracle, but they have a stranglehold on the American population from various sides. So first they have the user data. They have the digital fingerprints, the digital profiling in Oracle. And they have, of course, with their close affiliation to Israel, strategic goals. Now, what do you need now in order to kind of sell those strategic goals? Well, you need the media, right? And this media, let me just show you what this all is here. This is this whole media empire. I'm not going through all of this, but CBS News, for example. So you also have to realize that the movies you watch is also a way of shaping your opinion. Now, I'm from the generation where Top Gun was cool, right? Yeah. Top Gun today, they had, I saw a study a while ago, I forgot the exact numbers, but after Top Gun came out, the American army had a spike in recruits. So these kind of things have an effect. Yeah. But again, it's not only entertainment, it's also news. And from an outsider, especially as a behavior analyst, it's just staggering what you sometimes see on American news, and it's even more staggering that people believe it. They really believe it as true. And this is, yeah. Now, and then you can say, of course, we had talked about the New York Times today. Then you can say, of course, okay, forget this media empire from Larry Ellison's son David. We have independent media, so like the New York Times, you would think, right? Now, I couldn't get more on this slide. So these are all persons who work for the New York Times at this very moment with very close affiliation, personal, very close affiliations to Israel. I didn't even start to list those who worked in the past, right? So what do you think these guys do? Objective news? By the way, I interviewed, what was his name? From AP. He was the Middle East chief of AP. Sorry. It's on my YouTube channel. Interesting, I mean, how shall I say this? Pro-Israel, but the rationalization in his own mind. There was one statement, he said, I don't say it's not brutal what's happening in Gaza. It was interesting. Danny, his name. Yeah, so media is very tricky and influential. Lastly here, there are some key positions filled in TikTok, in the new version of TikTok, again with people who have close affiliation with Israel. Larry Ellison sowieso. Safra Katz, she had a very interesting statement, and I paraphrase here, for those who don't support our mission or TikTok's mission to support Israel, they're probably not the best people working for us. Yeah, she made this statement on a number of occasions in different forms. Erika Mindel was actually in the Israeli army, and Michael Dell is not on the staff for TikTok. Michael Dell is the founder of Dell Technologies. Many of you probably have a Dell computer, right?
You are showing.
Okay, that's one. Okay, yes. So that's the guy, but he's also closely affiliated with Israel. Now we have a peace deal, no? We have a peace deal, a Gaza peace deal, no? Now on the right, Larry Ellison. In the middle, Tony Blaire. Larry Ellison gave £257 million to Tony Blaire's institute, which allowed Tony Blaire to expand his institute into 43 different countries. I published an article, a deep dive actually, on the 2nd of October, so way before this peace deal was agreed. And I looked at it from a slightly different angle, because it turns out that this peace deal is a billionaire takeover of Gaza. And I know I make things a little bit black and white, but this is really what it is. It's a billionaire takeover. There is still, in the background of this whole thing, is still Trump's dream of the Riviera, in the Middle East. This is what's behind here. Now, there are a couple of entities here. First of all, Tony Blaire's supposed to be leading all of this, right? He has also exceptional powers over Gaza. And the key point I would like you to take away from this is that none of the Palestinians have been asked. So in a best case scenario, where will the Palestinians in Gaza end up? Now, washing the dishes in Trump's hotels. This is the best case scenario if this goes through. Now, there are international efforts, and I always have to say, also in my speeches, in my analysis, I too often focus on the West. But there is, of course, a deep, deep, deep complicity and responsibility of Arab countries. Because it turns out that in the back here, there are also Arab billionaires, right? So the peace deal in Gaza, as it looks now, I mean, first of all, any day where there's no killing. And by the way, peace deal doesn't mean there's no killing. Killing is still going on. A prominent journalist was even, forgot his name now, again killed because we have now more than 200 journalists were killed in Gaza alone. In Gaza, in this little, it was before the war. Huh? It was the most densely populated place on Earth, or the second most densely populated place on Earth. I mean, you really have to grasp this. They go in with, I read estimates 2 or 3 times the destructive power of the nuclear bomb from Hiroshima has been dropped on Gaza since October the 7th. This is so incomprehensible for us sitting in the safe, for me also in the Netherlands. Yeah? People do not realize the numbers of deaths. I'm hearing now numbers between 200,000 at the minimum and 600,000 at the maximum. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Yeah? But these numbers that are propagated, 50, 60,000, forget it. We will never know how many people really died because of the intensity of these weapons incinerate anything. How many people are under the rubble of those houses? And mark my words, now we have a peace deal. Why is the world not already in Gaza? Because Israel will clean up first. That's what they're gonna do. Yeah. So ceasefire, I'm extremely skeptical, but I recommend you read my article that I published on the 2nd of October. It has, again, I make sure, I do not propagate my opinion. I have lists and lists and lists of sources in all of my articles. How are we doing so far?
Good.
Yeah? Okay, good. So, the chains of the velvet cage. Now, I call our life, I view our Western life, our nice protected Western life, as a life in a velvet cage. Means basically we're in a cage, but we don't really realize it because we can't bang our head, so to speak. There is not this drastic killing that's going on, like in Gaza, for example, or in some other dictatorial state. But we are living in a cage. And because it's a velvet one, most people don't realize it. And there are a number of chains that keep us in this velvet cage. And some of them, I will show you. Now, digital IDs. Who has heard about digital IDs? Guys, wow. Digital IDs are coming hard and fast. Digital IDs means 2 things. Again, I published something, but I also spoke about it. 2 things. First of all, your real life identity will be linked to anything you do online. Your real life ID will be linked to anything you do online. Second, they are going to do this with biometrics. Eyes, faces, my iPhone scans, I forgot now, I think 90 times a second. UV light. Faces. So, what does that mean if your real ID is being linked to anything you do on the internet? Well, first of all, no privacy. First of all. Second, again, behavioral data. Behavioral data is the main driver because with behavioral data, they know you. They know you better than you know yourself. And this comes from a behavior analyst. If I talk about this with people, how can someone know me better than myself? I'm telling you, maybe I make a little detour. I call them programs. There are a number of ancient programs in our mind. Now, we have a relatively modern skull, but if you talk about evolution, then we accept today that we all have evolved. The same is true for our brain. But that also means that there are remnants from the past in our brain, and this is what I call with programs. Stanford University calls it cognitive biases. We have now 20 or so cognitive biases identified. Those are shortcuts in our brain. They are very fast, but not always accurate. So if you have a choice, now let's say 20,000 years, you walk through the forest and suddenly you see a tiger, you probably better don't start to reason, is that a tiger, is this yellow or what? No, you need a fast program in your mind that lets you react immediately. These are those shortcuts that we still have, and I can prove it to you. There's scientific research done in cities where people had already generations no more real contact with nature, and where no snakes existed. So they took babies and they showed the babies the garden hose, pieces of a garden hose. And the babies had exactly the same hormonal fingerprints as babies who live in Africa, who are actually threatened by deadly snakes. Right? So these kind of programs, they're still in our minds. So coming back to digital IDs, your behavioral data will be linked to anything you do. And this is not only linked to online, but also offline, as you will see with drastic consequences. Digital IDs in the real world. With everything going digital, the government, any government, and it doesn't matter if it's China, Russia, UAE, Ireland, or the Netherlands, will have powers they could not even dream about, because they can shut you down with the flip of a switch, and they're already doing that. Biometrics, why? So fingerprints is still arguable that one in, I don't know how many million, you have the same fingerprint or whatever. Yeah? Eyes is already more difficult. Facial is almost impossible. Then, if every action that you take, where does it leave you once you demonstrate for Palestine, for example, and an entity as Israel, who sees they're losing the narrative and lashes out more and more in terms of repression, but also influence in other countries. When the gap between the population and the politicians who lead their people becomes greater, when the economy goes down, when social unrests occur, when perfectly legitimate reasons for people to question their government suddenly be criminalized. Where does that leave the population, and what power do states and corporations suddenly have? I mean, this is the real danger here. So again, digital IDs are coming. I'm not telling you we should fight this or what. No, they're coming. There is no other way. They will come, and they will come in all countries. Question is only how fast this will be implemented. Now, a really boring little name, CFSP, and this is interlinked. CFSP, and again, this lady, you make a lot of pictures, you get everything. You get everything.
This is my old memory.
Yeah. CFSP 2025-966, okay. That was comes from the European Parliament, yeah? The European Commission, actually. Was meant to counter Russian propaganda, but it's a link to the original source document, but it can be expanded, or will probably be expanded. Now, it gives the state the power to immediately cut your resources by blocking you from your own bank account. They can, again, it's almost an automated process. They can prevent you from traveling. I will show you. A country like Germany prevents its own citizens to come back to Germany. And it's already happening. All under the guise of, and these are journalists, I will show in a moment, all under the guise of you are spreading Russian propaganda. But this, of course, the same pretext can be used for any other inconvenient narrative that doesn't suit the governments. Now, real-life examples. Tomorrow, I will publish my interview with Suzie Dawson. Suzie Dawson is a journalist from New Zealand, of all places. I put her in specifically because you think, okay, CFSP, that's a European resolution. What has to do with somebody from New Zealand? She lives today in Russia. In the interview, I said self-imposed exile, and she did not take it kindly because she said, after what happened to her, how the state basically terrorized her, her exile in Russia is not self-imposed. Yeah. So I interviewed her. She had a company, she still has a company, they're working on decentralized social media, which I hope you're going to look into, decentralized social media, but their bank accounts were in Iceland. So, bank accounts cut. Nigel Farage, I don't have to tell you about Nigel Farage, yeah, his bank account was closed. Then those two German journalists, Alinea Lipp and Thomas Röper, those two were journalists who reported on the situation in Russia and Ukraine, which in a way that didn't please the powers to be. They were and still are not allowed as German citizens to come back to Germany. So I'm making these kind of examples to show this is already done. This is not something, maybe it comes in the future, it's already there. The laws, the policies are already in place. Pro-Palestinian organizations, guys, you're on the list, right? And again, an example, if you think this is only in Europe, no, remember the farmers' protests in 2022 in Canada. The interesting part is here, what did Trudeau do? He blocked the bank account, not from the protesters, but from the periphery, from the family, friends, donors, and so on. No court ruling, nothing whatsoever. Yeah? These kind of things, they completely circumvent the courts. This is actually, I forgot to mention. So CFSP is a European Council resolution. There's no court involved, and you cannot appeal. This is a decision done by unelected bureaucrats somewhere in Europe, and there's nothing you can do. You really have to realize this. I mean, again, I published on it. You can check it out on the internet. I'm not making this up. Now, last one in this little. Who has heard about central bank digital currencies? Yeah. Oh boy, guys. Another thing that's coming hard and fast all over the place. Not only in England or in Europe, it's all over the place, also in China. So CBDCs, central bank digital currency, is the financial equivalent of digital IDs. It fits neatly. So you get kind of, when I ask people sometimes, so what is CBDCs? Yeah, well, that's kind of digital money. Not exactly. You get money that is programmable. What does that mean, programmable? They can tell you, you have to spend it till next month or it's gone. But you can only spend it here, but not here. And if you do that, you don't get it in the first place. It also means that, again, everything, every cent, every movement is being tracked and recorded. There is no matter, it's the absolute Orwellian glass house. Yeah. So this is being implemented, and what's her name? Lagarde propagated it. All European countries, they're working in high speed to get this implemented. Why? No? The global, and I don't want to digress, so the global financial system is not part of this presentation, but the global financial system is hanging on a hair. I would say on a, I don't know what's thinner than a hair, on a nano thread. Yeah? Now, they tried to implement CBDCs in 2 or 3 countries and they faced severe backlash. So, they need a shock. They need a financial shock in order to make us all compliant, to make us all so scared that we accept this madness of CBDCs. What's the best way to produce such a shock? A financial shock. Yeah, they don't need it exactly. Yeah, and it doesn't matter if this is an artificially induced shock or a shock that happens naturally. I mean, if you look at the depth of America, it's just staggering. I mean, and Europe is not far behind. The world is on a level of depth. It's just, also in serious, what was it, $1 billion? Okay. If you get every second $1, how many years do you have to live to get $1 billion? Every second you get $1, how many years you have to live to get $1 billion?
300.
Now I need to see, it's either 30,000 or 3,000. I thought it was 30,000 years.
30,000.
Yeah, but it could also be 3,000. But even if it's 3,000, it's a lot. Yeah.
Billion is a lot.
A second $1. Yeah, and we talk about trillions here, and I don't know how many. What was it? 37 trillions or so. Yeah. So America pays now more on his own debt than more interest on its debt than that. Yeah. Anyway, this is not part of my presentation. CBDCs, again, central banks, and this is also again where a merger starts to appear. It's out of the legal system. It goes into entities like central banks, for example, who then have the power to block everything. Now, quick example. I'm a little bit in Bitcoin. I make a transaction from my bank to a Bitcoin provider. Like 30 seconds later, I get a hostile call from my own bank, which is a huge international bank, asking me what I'm going to do with this money. Why do I send this money there? Yeah. It took me about 14, 15 minutes for them to agree to release this transfer. I didn't say it was for Bitcoin. I knew they knew it was for Bitcoin, yeah, but I did not say it is for Bitcoin. Yeah. So if you purchase anything that's contrary to what either your bank or the government wants, for example, you donate money to a Palestinian cause somewhere. CBDCs is a glass house. Now, I come to my favorite part, psychology of manipulation. And I have to say, I'm going faster through this than I thought, which is good for questions and answers at the end. Now, that also means I can take a little bit more time for my favorite part. Now, who was the father of modern propaganda? Spoiler. Who knows the name Edward Bernays? Okay. Okay. So there was this chap called Sigmund Freud. You know him. Yeah. He had a nephew, and this nephew was living in America, and his name was Edward Bernays. Now, that was a special guy because he was a very smart guy who used the scientific research of his uncle, Sigmund Freud, and applied it. So thanks to Edward Bernays, in the 1920s, and this is true, the women, the suffragettes started to smoke. And it was thanks to a very clever media campaign, because he sold the cigarettes as torches of freedom. That's the guy. But that's also the guy who helped convince the American population to get into the First and Second World War. Okay? Now, there's something else that he did. So apparently in America, Hammond eggs is seen as a healthy breakfast, but this goes back. This is something they do today, and this goes back to this specific gentleman because he had a PR campaign for a company called Beach Nut Packing Company, and they were simply a ham seller. Now, I'm showing you a couple of things because this is how he did it. And again, this was in the 1920s. And I'm showing you this because the same mechanisms work today in all of you, in all of us, including myself. Yeah? So first, he reframed the whole thing. Yeah? He he went away from selling bacon to associating it with healthy and hearty breakfast. Then he did something similar, smart, that he did with the suffragettes, where he said torches of freedom, cigarettes are torches of freedom. He enlisted the help of one doctor who wrote then to 5,000 other physicians, and they got a kind of consensus that ham and eggs are a hearty breakfast. And then he linked the hearty with healthy. Right? This is the framing. And then it's over and over repeated. Those are a number of cognitive biases which are very, very strong. Especially, I mean, there's scientific research done that how the more often you hear something on a subconscious level, the more you perceive that to be true. And even if you at the beginning you're completely against it, or this is not in your belief, if it's done consistently, if it's done by enough people, and if it's done often enough, and again, this is scientific research, little by little people change their mind and take something as true, only through the power of repetition. And then, of course, you have the availability bias and the recency bias. Now, again, our brains are lazy. Yeah? Our brains like to make quick decisions. So availability is if you have something readily in your brain, right? Then you tend to favor that belief that you already have and support it. These kind of what I call programs in our mind, but basically they are cognitive biases. Again, they're very, very strong. These companies, states, spin doctors know them and apply them. And how do they apply them? Now, this is the scariest part of this presentation. So, and I will link it to what I just told you. Now, who has heard about NATO's cognitive warfare program? Not surprisingly. Now, it was first discussed in 2020 and implemented in 2022. Again, this is already there. This is not future music. I have the original document linked here. Now, coming back to cognitive warfare, cognitive biases, how to exploit our brain. Cognitive warfare is a new frontier for the military. This comes from the military, and it is directed against it comes from NATO, and is directed against the population of NATO. This is what you have to, of course you can apply it also against Russia or whatever, but it is explicitly in this document aimed at its own population. So in the past we had 5 domains: land, sea, air, space, cyberspace, and now the human brain. What's really important to understand is that this cognitive warfare program works in tandem with all the other mechanisms that I have already discussed. This comes on top of it. This is the highest level within NATO countries in order to shape public opinion. I will hold for a moment in which direction they want to shape it. My main premise is that we, the Western world, that includes Ireland, are at the tail end of 500 to 600 years of dominance. And that all governments, especially America and the UK, are still trying to prolong the inevitable as much as possible. Now, Asia is rising if we want it or not. Asia is the future. China will lead this transformation. China is already ahead in a number of aspects. And if you ever been in China and you see some of those cities which you only believe if you see it for yourself, because otherwise you think you're in a science fiction movie. It's like that far ahead. Now, this is why NATO countries apply systems like NATO's cognitive warfare. Because they see that they're losing the support of their own population for a coming war with China. I published an article in regards to the preparations of America, how far they already have prepared for a hot physical war with China. I discussed this with, 3 weeks ago, I was in Malta, I had interviewed the former foreign minister, Évariste Bartolo. Unbeknownst to me, he had read my article, so we discussed this matter. So I'm very much concerned that all of us here are still young enough to see a new shape in the global order. And these kind of mechanisms, all of these mechanisms that I showed you already, taken together, where do they point us? What do they tell us? I mean, the intent, only the intent to implement them. What does that tell us about the point of view of the governments who do so? What are they expecting? What are they trying to prevent with these kind of measures? Now, it's not a peaceful future that they are counting on. It's not. It's the opposite, right? And this is why it's so important that these kind of measures, which have been implemented and still will be implemented right under our nose without anyone really discussing it. Why? Because they're implemented by unelected officials in the European Parliament. I did a piece on Kaya Kallas. Anyone knows the name Kaya Kallas?
Yes.
Good, I did a piece on it. Good, cognitive warfare. Now, again, cognitive warfare applies a number of programs, cognitive biases, very, very specifically. Now, one of it, and I'm looking through this through the lens of evolutionary psychology, and again, that's kind of my special interest field because I believe that you can only understand human behavior when viewed through the lens of evolutionary psychology, because only then you see, how shall I say this, the naked human. Yeah. Now, emotional manipulation, and I'm coming to these conclusions because I know as a behavior analyst how easy it is to manipulate humans with emotions. I had a discussion prior to this meeting here. Facts do not change minds, emotions do. You have to appeal to emotions. And this is what spin doctors and people like Nikki Haley do. So, do you know the speech where Nikki Haley, after October the 7th, Netanyahu, finish them, we know Iran is behind them, finish them. You know that speech? Yeah. I analyzed it. I show you what she does. This is not a spontaneous speech. I will look at it, I dissect it, you will realize that was not a spontaneous speech. There was strategic intent behind it. I mean, keep in mind she was a presidential hopeful at that stage. Yeah. But this is a speech that came across in first instance as like emotional and finish them and whatever. No. There's a sophisticated strategy behind it, and I explain it so that anyone can understand it. Emotional manipulation, number one. They go for your emotions because then that's the easiest way to manipulate masses, right? Direct psychological targeting, that goes again back to TikTok or Facebook or any other social media platform. Direct psychological targeting. I should make a differentiation between digital fingerprints and digital profiling. So all those multi-billion-dollar corporations who make their money on your data, I said it already, know you better than you know yourself. And that's true in terms of prediction. They know what you do. They know the likelihood. Again, in behavior analysis, we have a credibility scale. It's not black and white. Yeah? The same is true here. Now, direct psychological targeting. Cambridge Analytica rings a bell, I hope. Yeah. So what's so special with that scandal was that you got a different message than you. And it was exactly tailored on your social digital fingerprint. That's why it was so effective. Now, one of the things that fall under this category are false flag operation in the real world and in the cyber world. Now, you probably have not heard about Operation Gladio. I interviewed the Swiss historian, Dr. Daniel Ganser. Again, you can find this interview on my YouTube channel. He wrote his PhD on Operation Gladio. I make it very short, but it's really, really interesting to understand. After the Second World War, Europe and the Americans thought the Americans might invade Europe. It never happened. But just in case, they left a couple of armies behind, so-called stay-behind armies. They were funded by the CIA and by the British, largely without the knowledge of the state of the head of states of the various European countries. It was a big scandal in, I think it broke in Italy. Yeah, in Italy it broke. Are you Italian? Yeah. Okay.
Familiar with Gladio.
Yes. So again, secret armies, trained, funded, maintained in Europe. Now, since the Russians didn't come, what did they do? A whole string of terror attacks against their own population. Assassinations, political assassinations, some of which still unresolved. Olof Palme, ring a bell. Then they blamed it on the left. Classic textbook. Right-wing terror attacks blamed on the left. And now, that's why the name Charlie Kirk is here. I wrote a piece. I investigated not who killed Charlie Kirk. I'm not interested. I looked at what happened after. What happened 20 minutes after? Question. What happened exactly 20 minutes after Charlie Kirk's assassination? Anyone knows? Sorry?
Blame the left.
Netanyahu.
Netanyahu tweeted 20 minutes after Charlie Kirk's death. Now, imagine. Netanyahu is not Trump, sitting at 2 o'clock on the toilet tweeting. Netanyahu is a serious head of state. So in order to get the message out, there's a whole layer of approvals that have to go through. 20 minutes? Patrick Lawrence, senior investigative journalist in the US, whose interview I published a week ago or so, said that indicates foreknowledge. 20 minutes is way too short. That indicates foreknowledge. Kirk assassination, 20 minutes the first tweet already, and then the left, I mean almost immediately, it was the left wing, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, till today. So that's why I have this in the category of false flag operations, to which we are...
Like 9/11.
Okay. Okay.
Inside jobs.
Okay. I tell you one thing about 9/11. First of all, I have an interview, it's an older interview, with the founder of engineers and architects of 9/11. So I don't know if you know, there are 2,000 engineers and architects in the US who say this is not possible. It cannot possibly have happened like that. 2,000. So I interviewed the founder of this organization. It's a while back. Yeah. I discussed this also with Dr. Daniel Ganser. But my own premise is the Achilles heel of 9/11 is the third building that collapsed on that day, which was? So there are, I think, only 1 in 8 American.
Sorry, what was the third building?
World Trade Center 7. Only 1 in 2 or 3 Americans know that at this day in New York, a third building collapsed. Now, interestingly, this building collapsed based officially on an office fire, and I believe it had either 83 or 91 steel columns. And one of those, either 83 or 91 columns, gave way. I actually have the clip in my interview with, watch it. So this building collapses, no, I should, even better. 20 minutes before the collapse, the BBC broadcasts, a lady, that the World Trade Center 7 has collapsed. Whilst it's still standing right there, after her left ear, it's still standing. She said it's collapsed. Now, later the BBC said, oh, sorry, we got this information from Reuters. And Reuters said, yeah, sorry, we made a mistake. Now I'm asking you, first of all, before and after, no skyscrapers like this have collapsed due to fire, none. Yeah. How much is the likelihood that you, I mean, it's like going to the casino and you have the jackpot. I mean, this prediction on that day, there's basically a zero likelihood that this building collapses based on an office fire. On the same day, the other two were, yeah? And then you predict 20 minutes in advance and it actually happens. That's number one. Then the Reuters, oops, sorry. But there is a guy, Tulsi, Professor Tulsi from the university in Alaska. I actually reached out to him for an interview, but he never responded because he probably got a lot of heat. He investigated the World Trade Center 7 for 7 years. And he came to the conclusion that any sophomore with a stopwatch can prove that this building cannot have collapsed on its own. Why? World Trade Center 7, on a part of its collapse, fell in free fall. Free fall means you drop something, there's no resistance whatsoever, and it just falls. World Trade Center 7, for a part of its collapse, not the complete collapse, but for a part of the collapse, had the speed of free fall. And that's not possible. Because even if a building collapses, there's friction. Boom, 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 boom. We saw it in the towers. Boom, 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 boom. Air compression goes out, whatever. Yeah? Impossible. So and then in its own fingerprint, symmetrical, it goes down straight, right? So for me and many others, World Trade Center 7 is the Achilles heel of the whole 9/11 story. I'm not going into who did it, who knew, whatever. I find it interesting. I believe that George Bush's brother was a head of security in the two towers, but different story. But it's a topic that will not go away, as much as American government, CIA, whatever, Israel might like it. There are people who say there's a link. There are those dancing Israelis, which were not only filmed, they were arrested. Yeah, I don't know what really happened there. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to go into that. You know, Israel is responsible for everything. Yeah, but you know, they are left and right. Yeah, and what we can see now, they have no human. How shall I say this? You know what they did in Gaza. If you really realize what they did in Gaza, I mean, I don't know who is worse: the Israelis committing this kind of war crime, which it is, or the Western politician trying to justify it and selling it to us. I don't know what is worse. Yeah? I can tell you as a behavior analyst, whatever they try, these images from those babies, they go into the subconscious of people, and that creates cognitive dissonance. People don't like to have cognitive dissonance. There are psychological mechanisms preventing this, that this will come out. Yeah? Even in the Israelis. Yeah? Now, the Germans were so convinced that they win the Second World War that they have documented everything. Everything. Some of them were hanged because of the evidence they themselves recorded. Now, Al Jazeera has identified 2,000 social media accounts, not posts, 2,000 social media accounts, which frequently posted Israelis recording themselves committing war crimes. This is also where hope is. Sooner or later, the world will wake up and we will regard what's happening in Gaza as we regard today the Holocaust in Germany. Right? And the evidence is left and right. Yeah. Good. Dr. Daniele Ganser, very interesting. And again, if you're interested a little bit in how to look through what politicians say and how they actually do it, I explain it so that you don't need to learn it, you just need to know it. Okay, that's a clip for you to watch. Now, just so that you don't have to read the whole report, Cognitive Warfare, the original document is linked. Yeah, I have extracted just to give you a general sense of what they're planning with you. The human mind is now being considered as a new domain of war. We already said this. Land, sea, etc. Everyone contributes to cognitive warfare, and it provides invaluable knowledge on society, especially open societies, such as those in the West. That's us, right? This knowledge can then be easily weaponized. Nice words. The goal is not to attack what individuals think, but rather the way they think about it. They know they cannot get away from what the Israelis do in Gaza, but they can change how you think about it. This is what cognitive warfare is about, coming back to those influencers, Project Esther. This is exactly what they're doing. It's classic textbook cognitive warfare. Cognitive warfare is potentially endless, since there can be no peace treaty or surrender for this type of conflict. Yes, we are entering a permanent state of war. We, the West, will, and it doesn't really matter, the war against terror, the war against China, the war, whatever the next war is. We are entering a permanent state of war. The exploitation of human cognition, also the brain, has become a massive industry. I agree, and it is expected to even increase thanks to artificial intelligence. Again, I'm a little bit informed about artificial intelligence. What we're seeing now is the Kinderschuss, the first tentative little steps of artificial intelligence. What's coming in an exponential, linear, double every year, exponential, yeah, is beyond what anyone in this room, inclusive myself, can imagine. And I'm saying this with a tech background, right? And the companies, now, I gave a speech, ironically, in Prague, I think it was 2 years ago, for security experts. I leave it in the room, what they were and who they were. And there was a lady asking, yeah, but should we not regulate artificial intelligence? Should we not try to, hamper its growth? Well, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what's going on right now. You have to consider the race for true artificial intelligence comparable to the race for the nuclear bomb. This is how you have to see that. Because whoever rules artificial intelligence rules the world, no question. I know I tend to make things black and white, but that's it. Whoever, and who does it first? Because the first, even if it's only 10 minutes first, this first advantage, you cannot catch up. Right? So this is what's going on with AI right now. We are just at the very beginning. I do not know who privately or professionally already works a little bit with AI. I do. And I see from month to month. On the consumer consumer side, the progression. Now imagine what the militaries can do. Which brings me back to Gaza. I don't know if you know, the first 800 or so targets in Gaza, which were attacked in the first 3 days, were all AI-based, all of them. Yeah. Never in the past was Israel able to identify so many targets so fast and eliminate them. 800 in the first 3 days, purely AI-based. To give an example, you live in Gaza, you have a relative, I don't know, in Canada, and this relative was somewhere on a list. Boom, you're dead. Not the guy in Canada, you're dead. 800 in the first 3 days, artificial intelligence. AI is a second brain on your phone, for example. AI is a much, much bigger brain somewhere in a new data center. AI doesn't need to can draw. I use it sometimes. Some of my pictures were made by AI, but this is not what AI is in that sense. AI is a reasoning model, LLMs, large language models. These things can think. Now, in the past, maybe on YouTube, you heard sometimes when people went into a sensitive topic, they were talking blah, 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 and bleep and blah, blah, blah. So they covered the word that they're not supposed to say because the algorithm doesn't like it with a bleep. Forget it. Today, algorithms understand context. You can bleep what you want. They analyze this whole video, they know what you say, they know what you mean. And if you talk in real time, in your real life, they can predict what you're going to do with an astounding accuracy. And they actually need only a fraction of the data that we all have given them over the years. A fraction. So AI is a huge, I say it's one huge brain because AIs are connected, which also makes them useful, for example, in medicine. So in breast cancer detection, AI is like 90-something%, and human doctors are like 50-something, 54%. Every time one AI solves the problem, all AIs know it and can learn. Yeah? So AIs, in that sense, that I mean it, is an entity that can think and reason. And this entity is getting better and better and faster and faster. At the moment, they're building 180 AI centers in the US alone. 180. Each of which takes more power than a city and more water than a city. And where do they build them? Some of them are in the desert. Why is that a problem? Well, for every dollar in hardware, you need $4 in cooling. Yeah, water. Yeah. So I say AI is one brain because they're connected. Yeah. So we are all of us CSR are young enough to see changes based on AI, positive and not so positive. I don't want to disregard the AI benefits completely. Yeah. They're positives. I make a prediction. Very soon, all of us will pay for a subscription on our life. What does that mean? Very soon, the medical part of science will be so advanced that we can cure almost any illness, but that we also can extend our life expectancy. And you can pay an X amount if you want to live another year and you want to get this kind of service. Yeah, that's my prediction. And it will be very fast. And to some degree, we already see it. Because in America, for example, I had on that conference that I was speaking about, I met a guy who was working actually for law enforcement. And he told me what it costs to be insured, the health insurance in America. I thought I misheard. I mean, coming from the Netherlands, I mean, it's not cheap, but yeah. But he pays an exceptionally, and he's in law enforcement. So in essence, you already kind of, because if you get ill, the company I am closely associated with, let's just say it this way, I had a colleague in the US. She was on a conference call in the morning, and in the afternoon she had to go to the chemotherapy. I said, what? Why are you not ill? No, if I get ill, they kick me out, and I lose my health insurance, and I'm gonna die. Simple as that. In the morning you work, in the afternoon she got chemotherapy. Yeah. Also, different life in America. I'm very happy we live not yet in the same environment as there. I can only say data is the new oil. Especially behavioral data is the new oil. Everybody is collecting it. Everybody is selling it. And we were all signed for, agreed terms and conditions. We all did. Yeah, but this is the new lifeblood. Now, there's some other, I still have some statements which is in this cognitive warfare. You can read it. It's on my presentation or in the document. You will get my presentation. There's one thing, why all of this? So I scratched on this already. I actually preempted myself. So why all of this? Because governments, and again it doesn't matter which ones, Russia, China, Netherlands, Ireland, they anticipate what's coming. They anticipate grave social unrest. And one of the triggers, coming back to AI, is AI. Because AI, in the past, I mean, we had technological revolutions in the past, from the farms into the fabrics, etc., etc. It always came with friction, let's just say it this way. But there was always a means of progressing. Now this is different. AI is different because it's basically everywhere. And it will still expand. Now, governments know that. So governments think, okay, what are we going to do with all these people? So first of all, basic universal income, number one. Number two, yeah, we know just giving people money will probably not prevent them from going out on the street and demonstrating. So what are we going to do? Next to war and pharma, where go billions of dollars in investment? Gaming. Yeah, give them money, the old Roman concept. Yeah, give them money, bread and games. Yeah, bread and circuses, exactly. Yeah. So will that work? I do not know. For some people, probably. But for me, it's more. For me, again, the interesting part is, why are they doing this? Where are they going with this? What are they preparing for with all that effort? I mean, each of those policies that I showed to you, this is not something you just rubber stamp it. There's a massive industry behind it. And then industry, Oracle, the other companies, Microsoft, Amazon, don't get me started. Yeah. So the future in that sense doesn't look too bright. So if you really want to get depressed, there are 3 slides which I will not touch yet. Look at them for yourself. Okay? So what can we do? I was thinking how to end this on a positive note. Yeah. So, look, the fact that you guys got me over here from Amsterdam, the fact that you guys are sitting here, I see even 1 or 2 younger people here. Yeah, that gives us hope, right? Yeah. We just need to be mindful. I'm telling you, I had a 3-day management workshop, how to manage millennials. I kid you not. Yeah, so it's a different. But young minds, from a behavioral perspective, young minds are even more susceptible to manipulation than older minds. And you have to imagine that the neocortex, this is the part of our brain where we reason, where we think about things, develops till you are 21, 23, which is why they send young guys like 18, 19 to Vietnam or to Gaza, I mean the Israelis. Yeah? So young minds are susceptible. So we need to make sure that they have access to information. But as a behavior analyst, I know, again, I said it before, facts do not change minds. Emotions do. Which reminds me, I interviewed the CEO of a German PR company who focuses on evolutionary psychology to persuade consumer behavior. There's another one, Professor Gard Saad, evolutionary psychology. It's very interesting if you want to understand human behavior. Coming back to what can you do? Main thing. First of all, educate yourself. Yeah. I mean, I know I took a couple of exotics, CFSP 2025, digital ID, digital fingerprinting, digital profiling. Yeah. The problem with that is it's already here. Most people do not know. And if they know, they have a vague concept. I don't claim I know everything. Yeah. I can only say, with a tech background, I know how advanced it now already is, and we are just at the beginning. Right? Now, conversations. I can tell you from my own experience, when you embark on this path, it can be lonely. Yeah, because people have kids, they have mortgage, they have other problems, and yeah, it's a risky topic, and you could lose your job. I have a number of renowned people on my channel from academia and from other professions who lost their job. One example, Professor Nurit Pelet El-Hanan. Does it ring a bell? Pelet family? Miko Pelet. So I have interviewed Miko Pelet and Nurit Pelet. Interesting. Do we have still time? I'm kind of at the end, but do we still have time? Still an interesting anecdote? Yeah. If I'm boring, you have to tell me. Nurit Pelet El-Hanan. So first of all, Miko Pelet, also interesting. So Pelet family, first of all, grandfather, co-signatory of the Israeli Charter of Independence. Father, general in the 67 war. Problem for him was, he said after the war, okay, now we won the war, now we need peace. Nah, that didn't go too well, so he was sidelined. His children, also Miko Pelet, I already mentioned, Nurit Pelet El-Hanan, she was a professor at the Ben Gurion University, and she did research in regards to racism in Israeli school books. And the title of my interview with her is, her words, Pornography in Israeli school books. And she describes how the Israeli education system in their school books already, I don't want to say brainwash, indoctrinates young children. I come back to Nurit Pelet in a second. Now, the succession comes from Emeritus Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, who I interviewed, who says that the Israeli army uses religious texts in order to further indoctrinate their soldiers, 18, 19, 20 years old, so that they can kind of justify what they do in Gaza. Okay? Nurit Pelet El-Hanan's husband has an organization that combines parents of both Israeli parents and Palestinian parents who have lost kids. Because Nurit Pelet El-Hanan and her husband have lost a 14-year-old daughter to a suicide bomber in Tel Aviv. So whilst Nurit told me we can discuss anything except my personal tragedy, her husband was very open because he tours the world together with a Palestinian father whose, I believe, 11-year-old daughter was shot by a sniper when she left the candy store. So they're touring the world. Now, a Irish author, I think he was Irish.
They're actually, I went to see them on Monday, but they're up in Westport tonight.
Wow!
And actually Nurit's grandson is here with his granddad.
Tonight?
Yeah, but up in Westport. He did the tour with them, so I went to hear them in Dublin and Limerick.
Amazing.
And I mean, honestly, all I can say is,
amazing.
that is the glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
is still that.
So for people who do not know, so this Irish writer,
Colin McCann.
exactly, wrote a fabulous book.
Yeah.
A fabulous book. So somehow he went to the Pope, and he told me, no, Nurit told me that, and he was now twice invited to the Pope. So I said, so when is he going? He already was. Yeah. So I thought he's still, but this book has spread because it shows that there can be much more than cooperation. There can be, I mean, those are two grieving fathers. That's basically it. Yeah. So I can only recommend this book. I mean, I don't make any commercials, so, but that's really a special book, and I've read a lot of. If you see my interviews, you know I have a thing with books. Yeah, but what a coincidence. Yeah. So where do we want to go with this? Is hope. Young people who have lost, and instead of turning to hate, turn to understanding, right? So Miko Pelet told me, and his father confirmed it later for himself too, that he was like 40 before he ever met a real Palestinian in real life. I mean, this is that kind of apartheid system in Israel. It's just, and now, I don't know if you're aware about the Amnesty International report called Automated Apartheid. Anyone? You can find it on the internet, Automated Apartheid. It's interesting, again, tech background. First of all, they have these cameras which now have, first of all, a gun, camera, gun. But in the background, they're connected to Wolfpack Red and Wolfpack Blue. Those are AI programs which make the decision to shoot or not. Now, I find it a bit ironic because Wolfpack, does it ring a bell?
Nazis.
Exactly. Wolfpacks, these were the submarine swarms that the Nazis used to hunt down Allied convoys. So I find it a bit ironic that whoever came up with that name, yeah. But what I want to, again, AI. Yeah, AI, behavior. Yeah. Amazing. Good. Pushing back, what I have. I think that concludes my little presentation here. Only one person left. Only one person left.
And that was because his back was back.
His back, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have.
I'll just say one thing. Dan Perry is the man you interviewed.
Yes.
Dan
He
Perry,
knows my interviews better than I do.
Associated Press.
Yes.
And what was interesting, I wrote to Thomas after that interview because during the interview, Thomas had asked, telling Dan Perry, who was very critical of Netanyahu, he was telling Dan Perry that Netanyahu had been very involved with this Israeli Arnon Milchan,
Another story. Arnon Milchan.
who steals the nuclear details from America and transfers it to Israel. And this was all exposed, and Netanyahu's involvement with this whole process was also exposed. Now, during your interview, Dan Perry said, I don't know anything about that, and so I can't comment on it. So then Thomas says, Grant, I'm going to send you all the FBI files. It's all public information. So I contacted Thomas afterwards and I said, just out of interest, did Dan Perry, after he had seen those FBI files, did he ever come back and say, oh my God, this is amazing? Thomas said, no, nothing. Didn't get anything from him at all. So he's an...
No, but now we have to tell it. Do you still have a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
Arnon Milchan. Can you hear me? Am I out? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Arnon Milchan. Oh, what a story. Arnon Milchan comes from South Africa and he was originally an arms dealer. Today, Arnon Milchan is the top producer, I think it's fair to say, in Hollywood. Pretty Woman, 12 Years of Slave. This kind of movies. Arnon Milchan. Great. Now, in the past, when Netanyahu was chief of staff in the Israeli embassy in Washington, these two guys already knew each other. So there's a huge, well, what should have been a huge scandal happened at that very time when both Netanyahu and Arnon Milchan conspired together to steal America's nuclear secrets and ship it to and sell it to America. I can even tell you exactly what, tritons. Yeah. Now, there is a whole bunch of official FBI information obtained through the Freedom of Information Act by a journalist called F. Grant. I've tried to reach out to him, not yet lucky. That is clearly stated. But what's even more interesting is Netanyahu apparently have worked for Arnon in one of his shell companies. Now, the interesting part of this story, these guys are of course not stupid, they had a front guy. When this whole thing blew up, the front guy disappeared for 18 years, lived in hiding. Was not supported by Arnon Milchan, or not even talking about Netanyahu. Made then a mistake because they ran out of money. He had to apply for a new passport or something and got caught. Yeah, got originally 5 times life in prison or something. Then came out again and died on cancer. Oops. Yeah. Now the interesting part on this whole story is Arnon Milchan. I mean, you really cannot make this thing up. Arnon Milchan, sitting next to Robert De Niro gave an interview for an Israeli television channel in Hebrew, where he bragged, and I have this clip in one of my interviews. Yeah, you know, some people compare me with James Bond. Yeah. Okay, now, the 3 corruption scandals that Netanyahu is involved in, 2 of them, this Arnon Milcham is involved. Interestingly is what's discussed in the courts, that Netanyahu got, or basically his wife, from champagne, and how cheap is it to bribe him? How cheap it is to bribe an Israeli prime minister? Cigarettes, expensive champagne, and some brilliance, some diamonds or whatever. Yeah. So that's the surface level scandal. But nobody's asking, how come that Netanyahu can ask this billionaire, give me this kind of stuff? This goes back to that time. So, interview. Arnon Milcham next to Robert De Niro. Yeah, James Bond, yeah, and we smuggled and with this and that. And Robert De Niro confirms that the guy told him this like long ago. That's what friends do. Now, someone in the US State Department actually saw this interview and revoked Arnon Milcham's 10-year visa. That's very, very special. I think there's only a handful of people who have a 10-year visa. But for Arnon Milcham, that was crucial because he made his money, his millions or billions in the US. Now, Netanyahu goes to then Secretary of State John Kerry 3 times. This is documented. Netanyahu went 3 times to John Kerry to ask, my friend Arnon Milcham has a tiny little problem, we need this visa back. And it was done. Now, that's why Netanyahu has power over Arnon Milcham. Now, I have the actual footage from the interviews, because in Israel it's a big scandal. Bibi Netanyahu's wife, he himself, all his associates, I have the original interviews, the footage from the interviews. The arrogance of these people, especially from Netanyahu's wife, is just mind-boggling. Yeah? So in Israel, there's an investigation going. I actually did a linguistic analysis. You find it on my YouTube channel. I try to figure out how I called it. Where I analyzed the interview that Lex Friedman had with Netanyahu. The specific part where they talk about these corruption scandals. Again, if you're interested in these kind of things, if you really want to see if credibility analysis, not lying or speaking the truth, it's in the middle, credibility analysis. But there were some clear indicators, Netanyahu being in hot water. Yeah. So again, there's a massive scandal which is still rolling. I mean, a sitting prime minister engaged in a war is fighting simultaneously 3 corruption scandals. Arnon Milcham, his best friend, has testified against him. He also testified that he detested the fact that Netanyahu repeatedly had asked him for these kind of favors. Yeah. So that's a total different ballgame. Coming back to nuclear, I mean, these guys stole America's nuclear secrets. And I'm not even talking about a related case where we talk about 200 kilos of yellow cake being missing, which comes also in this kind of environment. Yeah? We're talking about nuclear secrets. So it's not only the French that assisted Israel in building their nuclear facilities, but also the Americans. And talking about nuclear, John F. Kennedy, 9/11. Yeah. So there are letters, publicly available letters between David Ben-Gurion and Kennedy, where Kennedy insisted on having access to the Dimona reactor whilst he was still built and prior to going hot. Going hot means when the nuclear fusion process has started, because then certain elements can no longer be inspected. Yeah. Ben-Gurion resigned as a stalling tactic in order to not have to comply to John F. Kennedy. And his successor then applied the same stalling tactics, and then, oops, John F. Kennedy was shot. I'm not saying there's any connection. I'm not saying there's any connection. I'm just saying there was a clear attempt. No, I should be more specific. The letters between Ben-Gurion and John F. Kennedy clearly show that Ben-Gurion consistently lied to Kennedy. Because he says, no, this is only civil, there will be no nuclear bomb, consistency. And it's not so that you can build a nuclear reactor and then in retrospect you think, oh, now we want to build a bomb. No, that's not how it works. The design is completely different. Yeah. So for me, those letters are really, really interesting because I'm at the moment busy with the analysis similar, you have to stop me in a moment, yeah? Similar to Nixon's communications with his chief of staff amongst the Watergate scandal. Now, there is a linguistic way to determine who in the hierarchy between two people is higher. Yeah? If you talk about employer or boss and employee, very often is the employee talks about I, the boss talks about we. So these kind of things. Yeah? So there are linguistic means of determining the hierarchy. And at the beginning of the Watergate scandal, the linguistic indicators of hierarchical rank was Nixon here and his chief of staff here. The further Nixon's stance weakened through the Watergate scandal, the more the linguistic indicators of hierarchical dominance shifted in favor to his chief of staff. And I'm now busy with the same between Ben-Gurion and Kennedy, just to see how that played out. Yeah.
Right. I can understand that, but I mean, like all these politicians are men who've been educated. They've been educated to be good or whatever. But you look at Keir Starmer. I mean, a Labour man, he's turned out to be some kind of an evil bastard in the end, right?
It doesn't matter. I mean, there's this one thing, and again, we slowly conclude here, but there's this one thing. If you look at geostrategic objectives of the West, led by America after the Second World War, they have not changed. It does not matter, Democrats, Republicans, it does not matter who is in the office. The ship always went the same way. And not just, it doesn't matter. I mean, Brzezinski already wrote in 1989, he warned about driving Russia in the arms of China. And I interviewed, I think it was Ambassador Just Freeman, a great guy, really great. And he said, we were even more stupid than that. We drove nuclear-armed North Korea also in the mix. Yeah? So, I mean, if you really look what they did, they had the unipolar moment. They had the US dollar as world reserve currency. I mean, you have to imagine, they can print money out of thin air, and this is not me paraphrasing, this is actually what's happening. And they're not even printing anymore, they're just, central banks, if you know the system. Yeah? So they had all of this. And look at the mess. Look at the mess in the world that they're leaving behind, because they are going down. America's empire is cracking.
So that's hopeful, Tom.
I would be mindful. So I have a comparison. So you know the elephant in the china shop. So America is an elephant in a china shop, but a wounded one. Do you know how they shoot elephants? They shoot them from behind, because then they can't run, and then they walk. And this is what America is. An elephant, a shot elephant, a wounded elephant in the china shop. The question is, how much damage will they do before they go down? That's the thing. And we are all dependent. The West is all pegged to American hegemony. We are the beneficiaries of that system. Right? And we are...
Is there anything positive that you can give us?
Yes.
Anything?
I learned one thing. And it sounds so like a cliche, but one much smarter than me told me once, we have two lives. Yeah? The second one starts when you realize you have only one. So I definitely have crossed this threshold. So what I'm trying to do is, first of all, sitting 12 to 14 hours a day on a computer, social contact. Social contact. Be conscious in your life. It sounds such a cliche. Enjoy the small things. Yeah. Try to be meaningful. Yeah. Try to try to do something good, and I know you already do, yeah? Try to do something good without any regard of what's in for you, for somebody else. This is incredibly rewarding, you know, and you don't need anyone to, whatever, with a camera or whatever, yeah? These kind of things. Now I have this vision, I had a little accident when I was young, and I have the scarves to prove it, where I lost a lot of blood. And I didn't have the experience that I will describe now to you, but since then it always was in my mind, yeah? Me being raised, I was in a Catholic private school run by monks with military discipline. So Catholic and religion and whatever, yeah? So God is a bit the thing, yeah? But I thought, what if there is no hell? What instead, or heaven, yeah? What instead, when you die, you experience all the emotions that you have caused in your life, in anyone you met, positive or negative. And it's not only the emotions that are caused by you, because my emotions have a ripple effect on your husband, these kind of things, yeah? What if this is what you will experience, right? Good or bad? So in that sense, and then we not even talk about karma, yeah? But how might Trump come back? You know, as what, yeah? But if you see this as that, you know, being really conscious, doing something meaningful, not in terms of achievement, but meaningful for you or for the other person, or, you know, these are kind of rewarding things, and it doesn't matter what the global situation will be, these things still matter. And they're still rewarding, right? I mean, I spoke to someone who told me the Second World War, so as a soldier, yeah, that was the best time of his life. It took me at least 30 years to understand what he really meant, right? But he meant these kind of things. Yeah? And what you see now in Gaza, for example, I have been, not in Gaza, I have been in Amman twice. Last little story. Are you in for it?
Yeah.
Last little story. There was this Israeli massacre on a village called Tantura. In Tantura, they surrendered, then they were massacred, mass grave, and I interviewed 2 survivors. I already told you. One lady in Amman, she died 6 weeks ago. A gentleman in Germany, he died 4 weeks ago. But the gentleman told me a story. Now, first background. So, this family belongs together. There is a niece in America. She's an American-Palestinian filmmaker. She was in the news because she was working for Netflix. Blew up because she said the wrong things. But the family owned large parts of Tantura, physically owned. Her uncle was the mayor in Tantura. Interestingly, the only house still standing from that period, the ruins, belong to that family. Now, I interviewed this old gentleman in Germany. The interview is done. He never met his niece. His niece was able, for her documentary, to enter Israel, and she sits on the stairs of this ruin of this family house. And I show that on my iPad to this old gentleman. And I film it. I did not publish this. The whole interview I have not published it. I can tell you one thing, time does not heal all wounds. This man was sitting there and just crying in silence. It was so moving, I still feel it. It's incredible. So, where do I want to go with? Tantura. These are meaningful things, right? And all these things that you guys do without me knowing, but again, the fact that you are here, you know, these are meaningful things. So that would be my answer to. Yeah. Now I stop.
It's been a real pleasure to listen to you, and thank you very much.
Really liked it. Really liked it. Wow, I'm truly impressed. You just spent 2 hours of your precious time and attention to listen to what I said. And that means something, because attention is the new battlefield. The fact that you stayed means you still choose what to focus on, what to question, what to resist. Most people don't even realize how radical it is now. to stay awake, to care, to hold your own frame when every signal around you is designed to fracture it. So if you take one thing from tonight, let it be this. Awareness is still power, real subversive power. Because the systems I've been talking about, they feed on passivity. But the moment you start seeing that pattern, it loses its grip. So keep watching, keep connecting the dots. Don't underestimate what a single attentive mind can still disrupt. And remember, always look beyond the headlines. Over and out.